get this thing going. Welcome into the WCIA 3, your Illini Nation pregame show here from Michigan State. East Lansing, Andy Olson, and Jeremy Werner with you here in the Hall of History at Michigan State. There is a lot of history to break down here for the Spartans, but it should be a fun game in the present, not just the history. Number 10, Illinois, here taking on the Spartans. Jeremy, you're filling in for Derek once more, and another repeat match that we've seen this season. A little bit of some rest for the Illini. And Brad Underwood maybe not enjoying some of that rest as they're trying to get back into it after a close win against Nebraska.
Yeah, and you got a hungry Michigan State team right after losing at Minnesota the other day. Disappointing loss for a team that's been playing really well over the last 7 weeks. They had a really bad 4-5 start to the season, but since then they're 10-4. And if you go by some of the metrics, Bart Torvik has them as the number 9 team in the country since they were 4-5. So this is a team that has played pretty well despite that Minnesota loss over the last couple of months. I think when you come into Breslin, you know you're going to get the best of the Michigan State Spartans. They've won 8 straight at home. And speaking of history, just a little note on this game, these two teams in their 125-year history, 64-64 tied, and Brad Underwood 5-5 against Michigan State. So something's got to give in this game today.
We will have to see what gives. Illinois with the win against Michigan State earlier this season. But that was a little bit earlier in Big Ten plays. A lot has developed since then. Since that rough start to the year, Michigan State has kind of leveled out into that, I would say, upper, maybe not the upper tier, because it seems like the top 3 in the Big Ten. I'm sure we will talk about the standings coming up here in a little bit, but it seems like the top 3 have broken away, and Michigan State just in that tier below. Still, you bring in Breslin. I just was walking the concourse, went down to the court for my first visit here. It's imposing.
Yeah. I mean, this is a huge game for Michigan State. They're currently kind of that 9-10 seed line right now in the NCAA tournament. The metrics love them because they haven't lost any bad games. They play really efficient basketball, but they need more wins. They're 2-7 in quad 1 games so far this year. So they've scheduled very difficult, which helps their strength of schedule and all of that. I expect it to be an NCAA tournament team. But for Illinois, this is a quad 1 opportunity. Like Michigan State is thought of in these metrics in the net rankings as a top 25 team. So even though they don't have the AP ranking, this would be one of the best opportunities left on the schedule for Illinois, along with Wisconsin and Purdue, to get a big win and really help them with their NCAA tournament seeding. But if Michigan State can get this one, Andy, this would really solidify their NCAA tournament seeding, or NCAA tournament projection. Because if they get a quad 1 win at home, you get 3 quad 1 wins, you don't have any bad losses. I think this team would finish as the top half of the Big Ten and certainly would be an NCAA tournament team. So a lot on the line because Illinois, if you win this one, all of a sudden, I think we could start talking about number 3 seed. We could talk about Illinois being the one team left in the Big Ten that can actually push Purdue because Wisconsin is kind of imploding.
3 losses in a row, man.
And down 9 at Rutgers right now at halftime. So I think that would really solidify Illinois as a top 2-3 team in the Big Ten and really set themselves up for another finish where they can actually compete for the Big Ten championship. I think Purdue's going to be very hard to catch, but at least you're keeping yourself in that run and really set yourself up for a high seed in the NCAA tournament.
And Illinois knows very well that Purdue comes to Champaign later this season. They've brought it up a couple of times. But you bring up the net rankings, the quad 1 wins, everything like that. Illinois, I feel like, needs a quad 1 win badly as well. You probably look at their best win of the season being that Florida Atlantic game in Madison Square Garden. Just not a ton of opportunities for them, and the opportunities that they did have at Tennessee, playing at Purdue, just weren't able to come up with wins. And not that they need this one, it certainly bolsters their resume, however.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about the real marquee wins, right? Because you can go to Maryland, get a win, and that's a quad 1 opportunity. Now, no one's predicting Illinois to win at Maryland because that hasn't worked out well for them. But at Iowa would be a quad 1 win. But to beat Michigan State on the road, that would be a marquee win that I think really helps elevate your NCAA tournament resume. And to be honest with you, Andy, after this game, they are favored in the next 5 games. So if you're able to get this one and, you haven't played the best basketball, but you are 4-1 since Terrence Shannon returned, all of a sudden you have a runway here where you can really get separation in the Big Ten and potentially an NCAA tournament seeding if you can take care of business on some of these games coming up. Because until that final stretch of Wisconsin and Purdue, Illinois is going to be the better team in all these matchups coming up here. Doesn't mean it's easy to win on the road and all of that, but I think they have a runway coming up with Michigan, Maryland, some other teams on the schedule. I think some Rutgers come back on the schedule. Like, they have some opportunities to really get past that 20-win mark for another straight season and really help their NCAA tournament seeding.
Yeah, you think about what is coming up. Michigan is the most recent one coming up after this. But if Illinois is going to have a chance at that Big Ten title, it probably needs to win out at this point with 3 losses already in the first half of Big Ten play.
There's no margin for error.
Exactly, because Purdue does come to Champaign, and a win in that game brings you level with the Boilermakers. Any kind of fall or loss, then you need Purdue to lose a game as well, which, as we've seen,
they're favored in every game
exactly.
left on their schedule.
It'll be very difficult for someone to take down the Boilermakers. Something, of course, that we have to consider the rest of this season. Terrence Shannon Jr., of course, like you mentioned, since returning from his suspension, Illinois, 4 wins, that 1 loss in overtime at Northwestern. The road environment at Ohio State wasn't the best, but it's something that we have brought up, something that I'm sure the team is considering, what these road environments are going to be like with Terrence Shannon Jr. returning from the suspension and with the allegations and with the lawsuit, what that reaction from the home crowd will be when Illinois goes on the road. We saw what it was like at Northwestern. Michigan State fans, of course, known for being loud, for being rowdy. And I have to imagine that is something the team is going to have to deal with today.
Yeah, and I think that's the greatest part about him getting a little bit of experience on the road so far. Northwestern was a half and half crowd, though, right? It was half Illinois supporters. Ohio State, as you said, dead crowd.
Yeah.
This will probably be the most vicious crowd he will face since returning from suspension, and potentially the most vicious of the season remaining. I mean, at Iowa won't be easy, at Wisconsin won't be easy, but this is going to be an amped up arena, and they need Terrence Shannon to play better. I think he's been a boost to them. He gives them a little bit more defensively than some of the guys were playing in front of him, just with his length and athleticism and size. I think him against Tyson Walker is going to be key today. They need him to get even better defensively, but just to get better efficiently offensively. He's shooting 36% since he came back. We've seen some flashes, right? Ohio State, that second half, he was All-American Terrence Shannon. We saw it towards the end of regulation against Nebraska when he had those 2 threes in a row that really helped Illinois build up that 10-point lead. But then later in that game, took some shots that probably weren't the best looks for him. So he's still working his way back in. But to get a win in East Lansing, they're going to need him to be more efficient offensively and be more dominant defensively. But Illinois has been able to win despite that, Andy, because their offense is really good. Marcus Domask has been phenomenal. Coleman Hawkins has been phenomenal. And Ty Rodgers, a guy that really tore up Michigan State in that game a couple weeks ago. He's becoming an impact player offensively as well as defensively. The other guy I really wanted to step up today is Quincy Guerrier with his matchup.
Yeah. You bring up the matchups, and it feels like, if I'm remembering correctly, Michigan State was one of the first ones to put the 5 on Ty Rodgers, which we saw in the first game that someone did that against him, he struggled with. But since then, Ty Rodgers has been able to take advantage of that matchup. Illinois has been able to plan for that matchup better. Do you see Michigan State going that same route today? Sissoko is probably a good bet to be put on Rodgers. Or do you think they go somewhere different because Illinois has proven they can beat that?
I think they do that because you put Sissoko on Coleman Hawkins, all of a sudden Coleman Hawkins can stretch him out.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden Terrence Shannon has open driving lanes, or Ty Rodgers has 6'1" Tyson Walker on him. So I think they will continue to go with that. But Illinois does have a size advantage, whether it's Marcus Domask on AJ Hogarth did a really good job on him, but Tyson Walker's got to guard either Rodgers, Domask, or Terrence Shannon, and he's given up a bunch of size to any
almost
of those
half
options.
A foot for any of those guys.
And he can be a pesky defender. He's a pretty good defender. Reminds you a little bit of Trent Frazier, the way he gets into people, can force steals. And Michigan State's really good when they get out on the run. But Illinois offensively is going to have an advantage at some point in one of those matchups offensively. So I'm not too concerned about this team offensively. I think they're one of the best offensive teams in the country. They find a way to get the matchup, and I think Michigan State's going to have some troubles. My concern, Andy, is on the other end. Defensively, AJ Hogarth and Tyson Walker kind of able to get to where they wanted to last games. They just weren't able to finish as much. AJ Hogarth was 6 of 19, but getting Terrence Shannon back might really help their defense because he's so much bigger. He can really impact Tyson Walker a lot. So you need some other guys to step up defensively. But the matchup I am keyed on is Malik Hall, who was terrible early in the season. He's been really good during the last 2 months for them. And he's kind of there when he goes well, Michigan State goes well. He's a matchup problem. And Quincy Guerrier's kind of struggled recently. I know he had 12-7 last game, but you just haven't seen the same bite defensively or on the glass. So he needs to outplay Malik Hall. And if that happens, I think Illinois can win this game. But Quincy's kind of had his lull here after a great 2 months. They need him to show up big time in a road environment.
Yeah, Brad Underwood attributed that to effort. So we'll see if the Canadian comes out with more of that today. If Brad Underwood has them pumped up. Speaking of Brad Underwood, key word for him yesterday when we were meeting with him, rest. Was not a fan of taking a few mandatory days off this week. Of course, this was the biggest stretch that Illinois had left in the season between games. They played Nebraska on Sunday, so 6 days between games. Had a mandatory few days off in there. Brad Underwood says that he thinks that affects them and that is something that he's keying in on, trying to get them ready to play. Is that something that you're hoping to see, Jeremy, at least them coming out with a fire early just to kind of get the monkey off the back in that regard?
Listen, I get it. Brad Underwood's concerned about maybe he didn't see his team locked in, coming back from a little bit of a rest day. I think it's a good thing for them in the long term after all the games they have played. But I think he knows you have to have your hard hat at Breslin. Against a Tom Izzo team that is desperate for a win, you have to bring the intensity and physicality. I would hope for an older team that is not going to be a problem. I think for most of the season, this team has brought that. Maybe they got through some games against Indiana and Nebraska where they didn't bring it, but those should be wake-up calls. And, if they don't bring it right away, like we've seen Illinois teams in the past just get blown off the floor here at Breslin. I think this team is too talented and too mature to do that. But if they don't match Michigan State's physicality and intensity, sure, it'll be a concern. But I think he's trying to prep his team for that because he knows how Tom Izzo teams play. But for the most part, that's how Brad Underwood teams play too.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Did you get to do 3 keys in a pick this week? First of all, how is that transition going from I don't want to say mainly football writing, but you're taking over some duties here with Derek on daddy duty.
Yeah, no, it's fun. It's you get to make people upset with some of your picks as we do on this one, including today's game. I think I'll upset some people with my pick with this one.
Foreshadowing.
I think it's a phenomenal matchup. I am amped up to watch this game, Andy, because this is a CBS game. Illinois is back in these matchups. And again, they have so much to gain. Michigan State has so much to gain. We got the Super Bowl this weekend, but then all of a sudden football gives way to it's college basketball time. And this is one of the main games on the slate this weekend leading into the Super Bowl. I think it's a great opportunity for Illinois. I think they're good enough to win on the road. I think they're the better team. Sure. But winning at Michigan State is always difficult.
It is very difficult. All right. Where are your eyes going in this matchup? What are you looking forward to? And what is your prediction in this one?
Yeah, I'm looking forward. How do they exploit the Ty Rodgers matchup? Because he has shown that he can attack these centers who aren't Zach Edey and do really, really well offensively. So they got to take advantage of that. Or if they go put a little guy on Ty Rodgers, you can exploit it by stretching Coleman Hawkins out, freeing the lane for Terrence Shannon. I want to see Terrence Shannon return to stardom today. The other one is we brought this up with intensity and physicality. Illinois is one of the best rebounding teams in the Big Ten. Kind of Izzo-like. You think of Tom Izzo teams, those teams are always at the top of the Big Ten. Not this one, but the last time these two teams met, I know Shannon wasn't there, Illinois was out-rebounded on their home court by Michigan State. Ended up winning that game, but I think they're going to have to win the glass today to be able to have a chance to win at Michigan State. My prediction, this is a toss-up game. It's a 3.5-point spread, I believe. Michigan State's won 8 straight at home. They're a much better team than they were early in the season, which is pretty typical for Tom Izzo. But I think this would be a huge win for Illinois, even if that number is not in front of Michigan State's name. But I have some questions about Illinois defensively, and I have questions about how they can close out games. They've had some struggles doing that at times, whether it was Northwestern or Nebraska. And Michigan State has a closer in Tyson Walker. We got to see if Illinois, Domask, Shannon, Hawkins can be those guys. So I had Michigan State narrowly winning 77-73.
All right. I hadn't considered what my prediction was going to be. Early wake-up call. I haven't had a moment to think about it, so I was thinking about what my prediction would
balance
be.
Us out.
Exactly. I know. I think I will balance it out, so I'll try to win some fandom from the Illinois fans that you made angry with your prediction. So I'll go Illinois getting the road win, because I agree with everything you said. Illinois probably is the better team, but you have to take in the home court advantage with Breslin, how hard it is to win on the road in the Big Ten. I think that does make it a toss-up matchup, and so 50-50, I feel good about my odds at the Illini in this one. I will say we'll go 78, 70. You said 73, so we'll do 74 instead.
Well, the thing is, road wins are so hard in the Big Ten. We continue to see that time after time, and now Wisconsin, the last I saw, was trailing by 9 at Rutgers, where Illinois dominated. If they can get a 4th road win in the Big Ten, that's the kind of thing you need in the Big Ten to make a push for Purdue. For
sure. All right. We're just over 30 minutes away. And by the way, if you're in Champaign-Urbana, Decatur, Springfield, Central Illinois, you watch this one on WCIA. Everywhere else, it's just CBS. But in Central Illinois, WCIA at 1 o'clock. Before people can tune in to Channel 3, how can they spend their time before the game on Illini Inquirer?
You can see our 3 keys to the pick. We got a game thread up there. Joey's got a notebook from talking with Brad Underwood yesterday. And, of course, we'll have all the post-game content. I know you guys have the press conference live. We'll do a podcast and our player grades and all that.
Yeah, perfect setup there. Tune in wherever you're watching this. You could be Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, WCIA.com. Tune in after the game for Brad Underwood's full post-game press conference. We'll have it right here. Plus, coming up tonight on the news, we'll have highlights from here in East Lansing. Plus, of course, my story from the game. Whatever happens to play out, if Jeremy's right, if I'm right, whatever it'll be, we'll have the story on WCIA. And, of course, tomorrow, the big game as well on Channel 3. If you're watching in Central Illinois, I know. Just stay tuned in all weekend, all 48 hours. Any quick predictions in that one? Is Brad Underwood going to be happy?
Yes, because I can't bet against Patrick Mahomes.
I know.
For the second straight week, I don't feel like the Chiefs are as good as the team they're playing complete-wise, but they got the quarterback, and their defense is really good, and I'm a huge fan of Isaiah Pacheco, so I'll go with the Chiefs.
I think I'm going to go Chiefs as well. It's hard to bet against Andy Reid. That quarterback and that coach combo, it's really the new Brady Belichick. I don't think you can bet against it right now, but I will be watching tomorrow. Brett has to come in and work for me. They're bringing in the A-team after the Super Bowl, so be sure to tune in, of course, to the big game, to the news afterwards as well. All right, for Jeremy, I'm Andy. Thanks for joining us here on the pregame show. Again, 1 p.m. on CBS, WCIA if you're watching in Central Illinois, and tune in here afterwards for Brad Underwood's post-game press conference. Enjoy the game, everyone, and we will see you before the next one.